Benjamin Franklin talking to the Constitutional Congress saying, "I've lived a long time, sir, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this, that God governs in the affairs of man, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, how can a great empire rise without his aid? The father of our country said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." I mean, I could read you 100 quotes of founding fathers talking about the importance of religion.
There is not a word about Christianity.
You know, I could get you quotes though from these founding fathers that did talk about Christianity.
George Washington was a deist. Benjamin Franklin.
I think this
whatever
is the
he felt
reason
obliged to say in public was not
the problem that we have during Christmas.
All right, hold on a second. Matt, we're falling back on the deist argument that happens an awful lot.
Not one word about Christianity.
Joe, this is exactly the reason why we have this problem during Christmas. There is a war on Christmas. Liberty Counsel represents Nathan Sage, and we're working with him to try to reverse this ridiculous thing in Newport News, Virginia. In Newport News, Virginia, they celebrate everything. They've got Santa Clauses, they've got the poinsettias, they have the snowmen. They even have what appears to everyone who looks at this, a Christmas tree, a triangle-looking tree that's decorated, but lo and behold, because it has the name Christmas attached to it, even though it's otherwise a secular symbol, they have a bias to censor that out and change it to the tree of celebration.
And Matt, you know, hold on a second, Matt. You know, let's bring a little light to this instead of all heat. Let's bring a little light to this conversation and talk about trends.
Light only comes from heat.
Okay, thank you so much, Christopher. Hold on, guys, stop. God bless us all. Just stop and let's have a meaningful conversation instead of people talking on top of each other.
Don't invite me on and tell me to keep quiet.
Well, Christopher, you know, why don't you let other people talk for a second, okay?
You invited me
to
so
anyway,
not
Matt,
to listen to yours.
Okay, well, you know what, Christopher? I'll never make that mistake again. Matt, here's the question, okay? Merry Christmas and good night. Matt, let's have a conversation for a second here.
Thank you.
You're sitting here talking, and other Christians have been complaining about how there's been a war on Christmas for a long time. But you've got to admit, there has been progress made. If you look at Macy's, if you look at Lowe's, if you look at what happens, like the city of Boston, if you look at the U.S. Congress, they are starting to bring the word Christmas back in these celebrations. Now, for me personally, this doesn't really mean a whole lot, but at the same time, it bugs me when people are so politically correct that they want to take the word Christ out of Christmas. So will you admit that things are improving?
That's why we launched our Friend or Foe Christmas campaign, and on our website at lc.org we have a memo that talks about what the law is.
Okay, Christopher, go ahead.
I'm supposed to just sit and listen to a broadcast for Jerry Falwell from Lynchburg. Is that right?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The tree long predates Christmas. There's been a festival of light, in fact, and of trees, Yule logs, trees. That's why they're all from Scandinavia, since the winter solstice was first thought of, long before any mythical event in the Middle East, a birth the date of which even the Bible cannot get right and repeatedly gets wrong. That's fine. Celebrated all they like. It would be impossible to live in this country and not notice that there are lots of Christians who like to celebrate the birthday of the person they believe is their savior. You cannot possibly escape it, but we don't want it to enjoy any public preference or subsidy, and the Constitution says that we don't have to. And the progress you're talking about with this guy from Lynchburg, this guy from Lynchburg defines progress as teaching junk science to our children, and leaving us the mockery of the world by pretending that we did not evolve.
Joe, I don't want to hold on a second. We're not going to debate intelligent design right here.
And he's a front man.
Joe,
he's a front man for the fat-faced Reverend.
Joe, I think Christopher is really
okay. You know what? This unfortunately is now moving into intelligent design. I want to thank you for being with us, Christopher.
Christopher has actually made my point.
That's going to have to be it tonight.
Don't say, look, do yourself and your faith the honor of saying it's faith. Don't say science-based.
The argument would be...
You won't get away with it.
Look, the argument would be, Christopher, is that if the universe exploded into being out of nothing, then miracles are possible because the greatest miracle of all has already occurred. The question is, have miracles occurred in the first century?
Miracle,
that requires another debate whereby we have to look at the historical evidence and see. And if it is true that that Jesus really did come and say and do the things that the New Testament writer said he did, then whatever he teaches is true, because if he rose from the dead, he was God. If he taught that there will be an intervention, then there will be. That's the argument. I don't have time to support it.
Now, a sentence or two from David Hume on miracles would clear all this up.
You'll need to.
Okay.
It's fallen off. So.
That's one of them. A sentence or two from David Hume would correct what you said. A miracle is defined not as a part of the natural order, but as a suspension of the natural order.
No, an intervention.
You can't say of the Big Bang, which is the foundation of the natural order, that it's a suspension of what it starts. You may not do that. However, if you meet someone in the street who you yesterday saw executed, you can say either that an extraordinary miracle has occurred or that you are under a very grave misapprehension. And David Hume's logic on this, I think, is quite irrefutable. He says, what is more likely, that the laws of nature have been suspended in your favor and in a way that you approve, or that you've made a mistake? And in each case you must, and especially if you didn't see it yourself and you're hearing it from someone who says that they did. I would go further and say the following. I'll grant you that it would be possible to track the pregnancy of the woman Mary, who's mentioned about 3 times in the Bible, and to show there was no male intervention in her life at all. But yet she delivered herself of a healthy baby boy. I can say, I don't say that's impossible. Parthenogenesis is not completely unthinkable, but it does not prove that his paternity is divine. And it wouldn't prove that any of his moral teachings were thereby correct. Nor, if I was to see him executed one day and see him walking the streets the next, would that show that his father was God, or his mother was a virgin, or that his teachings were true, especially given the commonplace nature of resurrection at that time and place. After all, Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened, and their occupants wandered around the streets to greet. So that it seems the resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely conceived. So I'll give you all the miracles, and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack.
I mean, the majority of people in this country, in the United States, clearly agree that the doctrine of martyrdom in Islam is appalling and not benign and liable to get a lot of people killed and worthy of criticism. Likewise, the doctrine that souls live in petri dishes. Even Christians, even 70% of Americans don't want to believe that in light of the promise of stem cell research. So it seems to me once we focus on particulars, we have a real strength of numbers, and yet when we stand back from the ramparts of atheism and say it's all bogus, we lose 90% of our neighbors.
Well, I'm sure that's right. On the other hand, my concern is actually not so much with the evils of religion as whether it's true. And I really do. I mean, I care passionately about that. The fact of the matter is there, as a matter of fact, a supernatural creator in this universe, and I really care about that. And so, although I also care about the evils of religion, I'm prepared to be even-handed because they all make this claim, which seems to me equally.
I would never give up the claim that all religions are equally false, and for that reason, because they're false by preferring faith to reason. Latently, at least, equally dangerous.
But equally false, but surely not quite equally dangerous because of...
No, latently I think so, because
latently, maybe.
Because of the surrender of the mind. The surrender of the mind, the eagerness to discard the only thing that we've got that makes us higher primates, the faculty of reason. That's always deadly. And always,
I'm not sure.
I think
it's potentially
the Amish can't hurt me, but they can sure hurt the people who live in their community. They have a little totalitarian,
but not quite in the
system.
same way.
The Dalai Lama claims to be a god king of hereditary monarchy, and inherited godliness that's the most repulsive possible idea, and he runs a crummy little dictatorship in Dharamsala. Right. And it would be worse, and praises the Indian nuclear tests, it would be worse. It's only limited by his own limited scope.
But if you added
the same evil
jihad to that, you would be more concerned.
Well, look, every time I've ever debated with Islamists, they've all said, you've just offended 1 billion Muslims, as if they spoke for them.
Right.
As if there's a definite threat to this a menace, a military tone to what they say. In other words, if they'd said, you've just offended me as a Muslim, it doesn't sound quite the same, does it? If they were the only one who believed in the Prophet Muhammad. No, it's 1 billion. And by the way, what's implied in that is watch out.
Right.
Yeah. I don't care. If it was only one person who believed that the Prophet Muhammad had been given dictation by the Archangel Gabriel, I'd still say what I was saying.
The atheist proposition is the following. Most of the time, it may not be said that there is no God. It may be said that there is no reason to think that there is one. That was the situation after Lucretius and Democritus and the original anti-theistic thinkers began their critique of religion. And I would just ask you all, ladies and gentlemen, to bear in mind a mild distinction while we go on. You may wish to be a deist, as my heroes Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine were, and you may not wish to abandon the idea that there must be some sort of first or proximate cause or prime mover of the known and observable world and universe. But even if you can get yourself to that position, which we unbelievers maintain is always subject to better and more perfect and more elegant explanations, even if you can get yourself to that position, all your work is still ahead of you. To go from being a deist to a theist, in other words, from someone who says God cares about you, knows who you are, minds what you do, answers your prayers, cares which bits of your penis or clitoris you saw away or have sawn away for you, minds who you go to bed with and in what way, minds what holy days you observe, minds what you eat, minds what positions you use for pleasure. All your work is still ahead of you, and lots of luck. Because there's nobody, even Aquinas had to give it up. There's no one who can move from the first position to the second. So I could, and I'm actually strongly tempted to, I could leave it right there. But then it's not in my nature to let off a captive audience so easily. So I'll add a couple of things. The reasons why I am glad this is not true would, I suppose, be the gravamen of my case. Some people I know who are atheists will say they wish they could believe it. Some people I know who are former believers say they wish they could have their old faith back. They miss it. I don't understand this at all. I think it's an excellent thing that there's no reason to believe in the absurd propositions I just admittedly rather briefly rehearsed to you. The main reason for this, I think, is that it is a totalitarian belief. It is the wish to be a slave. It is the desire that there be an unalterable, unchallengeable, tyrannical authority who can convict you of thought crime while you are asleep, who can subject you, who must indeed subject you, to a total surveillance around the clock, every waking and sleeping minute of your life, I say of your life, before you're born, and, even worse, and where the real fun begins, after you're dead. A celestial North Korea. Who wants this to be true?